Today, Ian and Jessi have built their buggies. Now it's time to craft the ultimate tow rig to get them on and off the trail. It's part one of Project SubUrban Gorilla!
Welcome to Xtreme 4x4. You know, it's hard to believe that we've been making this show for almost a year now, and wow, what a ride it's been.
Even though we've had a crazy hectic schedule, we have had so much fun building all these trucks. Like the hardcore no-budget aluminum Jeep, the $5,000 budget cheap Jeep,
The race-themed Baja-style Ranger that we dragged out of a wrecking yard, and then the latest one, the full-tube chassis Poison Spider Rock Rod.
We even had the opportunity to get out of the shop and go to a couple of events. These are the competition trails at Jellicoe, Tennessee during a We Rock event. This is Ian and I's first time to be able to compete on an official course with official scoring when our buddy Howard from Rhino Off-Road invited us for a celebrity rock crawl.
So after some tips, Jessi climbed in the seat and took her first trip through the cones.
And driving these competition trails aren't as easy as it looks, but the Rhinos handle them with ease, even when you hit some cones.
And although Jessi knocked over a cone, it was my turn then to climb in a Rhino and hit the same trail under the same conditions. And it worked great. The Rhino crawled over everything, but when the rain came down and the mud started to get a little slick and you don't pay attention to your spotter, you're gonna knock over a cone as well.
Now, we weren't the only ones out on the trail.
Marie Torbett, granddaughter of Supercrawl champ Randy Torbett, was there tearing up the same trail as we were, showing her grandfather that she deserved his seat in next year's races.
It's always nice to see another girl out in the trail, and especially for as young as she was doing awesome.
So amongst you two, I'm sorry, but I'm sorry the rookie wins.
Okay. So I ran over another cone that was in the way.
Marie did a great job.
And even though Jessi looks really sad here, I'm sure on the next event she'll be able to maybe at least tie me. And Tim took the big win, but considering that he won a 50-50 draw to get a seat in this race, and he was actually competing in the We Rock event, we'll just call him a ringer. Now, driving those Rhino buggies was a blast, and we've had a great time wheeling everything else we've built so far. But all of our projects have one thing in common. Before you can hit the trail, you have to get there on a trailer.
Which brings us to our newest project that we get requests for on our website all the time, the ultimate tow rig. We did all our research, and this is what we came up with.
A 2006 Hummer H1 Alpha. You don't get more extreme than this. This thing turns heads all day long, tows like a beast, and the best thing is, if something happens to your trail rig when it's out on the trail, this thing is capable enough off-road to get in there and get it out for you.
The heart of the H1 is the powertrain, 6.6-liter V8 turbocharged Duramax diesel with 300 horsepower at 3,000 RPM and 520 foot-pounds of torque at 1,600 RPM.
Before all that power hits the ground, it first has to travel through the H1 portal box, and that's going to allow the drive axle to enter the wheel above the wheel center line. And that's going to give this truck increased ground clearance as well as a gear reduction right at the hub. And when you're talking gear reductions in one of these, you got to talk about the transmission. This thing's packing an Allison 1000. That's a 5-speed automatic transmission with a tow feature that a flip of a switch, this thing can haul over 9,000 pounds. And with a first gear ratio of 3.1 to 1, this thing ends up with a final crawl ratio of 45.1 to 1.
And inside this truck, you're going to find all the creature comforts that you would find in a brand new SUV. Rear AC, power windows, power locks, leather seats. But there's only 4 of them. What if we want to go wheeling with more than just 3 other people?
And when we head out, we usually do. But behind the wheel of this thing, you feel like king of the road. With a full complement of gauges, switches for the lockers front and rear, the CTIS tire inflation, this thing's a blast to drive.
But what if you want to build your own truck and you don't want a truck that looks just like your neighbor's truck? Well, you can do exactly what we're going to do. We're going to build our own.
Like this one,
Right here.
but a little different.
And it all starts with an 87 Chevy Suburban.
And we picked this up online for 600 bucks and then called the guys at 4x4 Bodies. They sent us this Urban Gorilla body kit. Now this is an all steel body, it's 14 gauge, been laser cut and then hand laid over a tubular substructure for strength. Now they have these in a bunch of different styles. They got 2-door pickups, soft top models, and we chose this 4-door hard top so we could still have a little bit of a bed in the back. And the best thing about this thing, you don't need a great big fancy shop like we have here. This kit is honestly designed to be done by the average guy in his garage. All you need is a donor vehicle and one of these.
And this complete body kit comes with everything from the fiberglass front end with the doors, the quarter panels, light kit, wiper kit, hinges, latches, basically everything that you're gonna need to make your donor vehicle into an H1 inspired truck. So pretty much we're gonna save absolutely nothing because we're gonna be replacing it all with brand new stuff. First thing you gotta do is make sure that everything that attaches the body to the frame is disconnected. Yeah! Ah!
It's all right, it's 12 volts.
We should unplug that.
Whoa. Okay, now go up. Keep going, keep going. Okay, whoa.
Good job.
With the body removed, Jessi and Ian can start stripping the frame. Plus, later on, a New Mexico trail appropriately named the Bonecrusher, when Xtreme 4x4 continues.
We're back on Xtreme 4x4 where we're in the process of tearing down this junkyard Suburban so we can turn it into a Humvee-inspired tow monster. Step one's done with the body off.
And now we're gonna strip all the factory body mount locations off the frame.
And anything else that we don't need, which is pretty much everything, so we can slide it under and find the new location for our new body mounts.
With the frame stripped, we can simply slide it underneath the body.
This body was designed with a really long firewall, designed also for it to be cut out so we have clearance for our transmission, so it's gonna cut it out.
The body mount brackets that come with the Urban Gorilla kit reuse the Suburban rubber isolator and bolt assembly. Now we'll probably replace these later with new units once we get this thing final assembled. Now the body's sitting on some wood so we know it's at the right height above the frame rails, and all we're gonna do is mark the hole for this body mount, then we can drill it, bolt it in, and then weld this piece to the frame.
When we were stripping down the frame, I had to trim some of the rear frame rails off to get rid of the bumper, but to be able to weld on the new bumper, I'm gonna have to cut more off or it's gonna sit way out here. That's gonna look funny.
That's why it was only $600. With the rest of this drivetrain out, we can start putting our attention towards this engine. Now the stock 350 that's sat between these frame rails might be okay for a regular off-road truck, but we want more.
And when you want ultimate power, you might want to start looking into diesel performance engines. They're big news lately, and with gas prices, you can't shake your head at horsepower ratings and torque curves that peak at 700 and still get 20, 30 miles per gallon. Oh, hold on. All right.
So the decision was made, out with the gas, in with the diesel. But that led us on a real quest. We had to find someone who was big into towing, big in diesel performance, and we knew that it was going to take more than just a fuel computer to fulfill our dreams in this truck.
And when you add up all those requirements, the road leads you to Gale Banks Engineering. When we called him with our idea, he jumped on board and hooked us up with this GM Duramax for our mock-up.
And then later we'll trade this engine for a brand new Duramax full of all sorts of internal goodies like an upgraded crankshaft, new connecting rods, and new pistons. Then here at Xtreme, we'll trade out the top end for some CNC cylinder heads and an upgraded twin turbo system, all designed by Gale Banks Engineering. But the question everyone seems to ask is, why is a heavy hitter hardcore diesel engine like this one better for towing than a lumpy old gas engine like that?
The answer is horsepower and torque curves. We built this Dodge pickup with Gale Banks Engineering, and Gale even spent some time at the Xtreme shop talking about the benefits of diesel power. Even though they require a different fuel source and higher compression ratios, they're very similar to a gasoline engine. You can modify them the same way. Now, if you look at the torque and the horsepower curves of a conventional gas engine, you can see that the power increases as the RPM increases. The diesel is very similar, except it increases at a much more rapid rate, and that's due to the engine design and its ability to produce more power at a lower RPM. You'll also be able to see that the curve is more flat and higher at a lower RPM. Every vehicle requires a certain amount of power to take off, and that's called road horsepower. Now you can also see that on this graph, in a 4-speed transmission, the power peaks and then it drops off. And that's because the truck's gearing is forcing that RPM drop. But as you speed up, that drop is less dramatic because at higher gear ratios, they're often more closer to each other, allowing the truck to perform in its peak curve. So the more gears you have, the less violent that drop is going to be. Now stay with us and we'll show you what transmission we picked to keep our truck running in its peak power curve.
The Xtreme 4x4 Event of the Week is brought to you by Fram, America's #1 oil filter.
Welcome back to Xtreme. For those of us who like to play outdoors, we understand the importance of dedicated trails, or OHVs, off-highway vehicle areas, because most of us don't have private land that we can access to go four-wheeling on.
And some of the top trails west of the Mississippi are in New Mexico's Chokecherry Canyon, where one trail in particular wreaks havoc even on the locals.
There are over 50 trails around Farmington, New Mexico, but for the hardcore wheelers, it's about nailing the Bonecrusher.
This is extreme four-wheeling right here, so I mean, it doesn't get any better than this. Either go or no go. Well, the first climb on the Bonecrusher kind of roots out everybody that don't want body damage. After you get past that, it's constant body damage.
There you go. And any of these extreme trails, anything's liable to happen, especially when you get a group of guys like this out here. Tend to get a little wild sometimes.
The Bonecrusher isn't for everyone.
Let the kids tear the shit up. I'm gonna keep mine nice.
I agree.
On the Bonecrusher, they met their match.
Shaft!
As soon as it hit, I heard it pop. It just snapped all the bolts and an axle shaft all at once. So we're looking at probably about $300 worth of repairs here. You feel it in your stomach quick. Oh, that hurt.
Not usually supposed to spend that much. Kind of got a little fixing to do here.
Broken parts weren't going to stop Zach from getting to the top.
I mean, you got to continue on. I mean, if the Jeep is still running and you're only one axle down, you still got 3 left. I mean, what else can I do? You still got to get out of the trail no matter what. So you just got to give it a little gas and keep on going. That's what next weekend's for, to fix it.
Broken rigs and tight trails didn't scare off Zach Steele and his '74 Blazer.
I have a family, so I take my dogs and my kid and my wife everywhere we go, and we do the most extreme trails. You'll see us out there doing our best to keep up with the guys at the rock buggies.
He's trying to keep up in a full size, no less.
You try to ride it like a dirt bike. You keep the front end in the air and just keep the throttle pinned.
As the rains moved in, no amount of horsepower was going to help him through the Bonecrusher.
We run the hardest trails, and all everybody says you can't make it in a full size, and I do my best to prove them wrong. I mean, today was obviously a fault. I didn't get to prove them wrong today, but give me another shot when it ain't raining on us, and we can probably get it done.
Man, look at Steele go. He's not giving up.
Looks like Bonecrusher 1, Xtreme none. Speaking of which, what are we going to do with that thing?
I don't know, but that full size has inspired us. Maybe we'll just have to wait and see. Check back after the break. We'll be jumping back on our full size build here at Xtreme. Welcome back to Xtreme 4x4, where we're getting ready to shove a pretty serious drivetrain in between the frame rails of our Urban Gorilla project.
And a new drivetrain means new mounts, so those factory cross members gotta go.
Now the Duramax diesel is a pretty healthy engine just in stock trim, but by the time we get done with it here, we're gonna be pushing some pretty serious numbers at that flywheel. So we're gonna need a heavy duty transmission, and you don't get any more heavy duty than the Allison 1000. This is a full helical cut automatic transmission with 5 forward speeds, a lock-up torque converter, 2 live PTOs, and it's computer controlled. This transmission is capable of towing over 26,000 pounds, and that's in stock trim. Now we crated up this transmission and shipped it off to Hill Killer Transmissions. Now they specialize in heavy duty pulling and diesel performance transmissions. And we told them the numbers that we expected to pull out of this Duramax and the weight we're gonna pull with our Urban Gorilla, and they custom built this transmission using heavy duty Kevlar clutches, choline steels, and a triple disc torque converter. Then they dynoed this thing out at 1,000 horsepower and 1,200 foot-pounds of torque. So we're comfortable in knowing that this transmission is going to be able to stand up to whatever this Duramax puts through it.
Not only is that drivetrain powerful, but it's huge. And for us to be able to fit in our turbos and our intercooler, we're going to want to push that Duramax back. So what I'm going to have to do is make some modifications to the firewall by cutting out this huge chunk. I set the interior fiberglass in place to get an idea of how much modification will be possible without affecting the passenger compartment. Then I built this new subframe out of 1x1 tubing and welded it to the Urban Gorilla floor for added support. With the floor supported, I will do a rough cut with the plasma cutter. And I will clean up the cuts with the grinder and weld the seam with the MIG.
A custom engine will require custom mounts, and after cutting some 1/4-inch plate, I'll drill the mounting holes. I will use these new Prothane engine mount bushings inside some 2-inch 1/4 wall DOM tubing. With everything tacked together, I can TIG weld the entire engine mount. Now, since the turbo system for this engine is going to be custom, and we're going to design that next time, we're going to wait before we slip that between the frame rails.
So that's all we have for you today, so come back and play with us next week when we finish this drivetrain with our transfer case, or should I say transfer cases.
And I think I got the name. See, SubUrban and Urban Gorilla, SubUrban Gorilla.
That's right. We'll see you next week.
Bye now.